The time is now 5:30, and we do have a quorum present, so I will call this meeting of the Madison Plan Commission of April 24th, 2023 to order. First, we will hear from our technical facilitator.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. First on the agenda is public comment, and I don't believe we have anything for public comment. So then we will move on to communications disclosures.
Chair, we do have a person registered.
For public comment?
Correct.
A late registrant? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jesse, who is that, please?
Okay, I'm going to try with your name here, but with Joanne Pritchett, District 9, Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. Joanne, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Joanne Pritchett, and I have registered to speak to oppose the approval of the 7005 Tree Lane, Madison, Wisconsin project. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a senior, plus 8 others with similar shared concerns. The major concerns are these: crime. Within the past 6 years, Tree Lane, which begins at Gammon Road and ends at Mineral Point Road, has transformed in many ways for the worse as it relates to crime and an increased police presence at the Westford Ridge property at Tree Lane and Gammon Road, as well as the Tree Lane and Mineral Point property, ranging from gun violence and homicide to property damage and theft. Traffic. Too many drivers treat Tree Lane as an Indianapolis speedway, with a total disregard for pedestrians, not adhering to stop signs for children exiting the very visible yellow school bus, not adhering to posted speed limits or crosswalk signage for Jefferson Middle School or Memorial High School students, ignoring or inattentive to pedestrians at the crosswalk when making right-hand turns onto Gammon Road from Tree Lane. For example, on October 31, 2022, I was struck by an automobile in the crosswalk because the driver was inattentive and or distracted. Transparency. Developer dishonesty and lack of transparency. Residents of Tamarack Trails were misled after listening to developers who sought input and support of the Vista West footprint, which is across the driveway from the property that you wish to develop. That property was originally approved by Tamarack Trails residents, only to see that footprint almost doubled. Given the concerns expressed by me and 8 others about the introduction of a tavern, an increase in traffic, behavioral problems and alcohol, parking, an expectation that the police will handle the problems, the potential for more crime, putting others at risk, etc. This project should not be allowed to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. This does appear to be related to agenda item 8 on our current agenda. Do any commissioners have any questions of Joanne? Seeing no raised hands, we will move on. The next item on our agenda is communications, disclosures, and recusals. The first thing I would like to do is welcome our 3 new Alder members. So we have Alder John Duncan, who is representing the 1st district in the city of Madison. Welcome. Second is Alder Derek Field, representing the 3rd Alder district. Welcome. And the 3rd Alder, new Alder on our commission is Jeanette Figueroa Cole, representing the 10th district. So welcome to all of you. We look forward to your active participation as we move forward. Moving on, members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands, moving on to minutes. The minutes of the April 10th regular meeting, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Upcoming meetings. We have regular meetings on Monday, April 8th and May 22nd and June 12th and 26th. These are at 5:30 and are virtual meetings. Then we have a special meeting scheduled for June 22nd. That will begin at 5 o'clock, and that will be in room 215 of the Madison Municipal Building. Okay, next, we will move to our consent agenda. It is the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed on it by the various city departments, on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item. So those items are placed on the consent agenda along with those items to be referred. So then people interested in those items can disconnect. Unless a member of the Plan Commission requests separation, in which case the item is removed from the consent agenda and taken in the regular course of business. Of the items before us today, the following are proposed for the consent agenda. Agenda item 2, agenda item 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then for referral, agenda items 9, 10, and 11, which are related, and they would be referred to the May 8th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting at the request of the applicant and staff. Also for referral, agenda items 12, 13, and 14, which are also related, and also to be referred to the May 8th Plan Commission meeting at the request of the applicant and staff. Are there requests for separation for any of those items? Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think considering we had the public comment on item 8, we probably should remove that from the consent and at least have the staff report and maybe any discussion that may occur.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. So agenda item 8 is off the consent agenda. Anything else? Okay, I will read the full description of the items into the record, those items to be that are on the consent agenda. The first one is agenda item 2, Legistar 77187, determining a public purpose and necessity and adopting transportation project plat numbers 12777-3-4.01 through 12777-3-4.11 for the required acquisitions for the plats of lands and interests required for the East-West Bus Rapid Transit Mineral Point Road segment project located along Mineral Point Road between the West Beltline Highway on the west and South Whitney Way on the east, 9th, 11th, and 19th Alder District. Also on the consent agenda, agenda item 5, Legistar 76491, located at 4846 East Park Boulevard, 17th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Corridor Transitional District for a mixed-use building containing greater than 60 dwelling units and consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential 2 district for a multifamily dwelling containing greater than 60 units to allow construction of a planned multi-use site containing a 5-story mixed-use building with approximately 7,600 square feet of commercial space and 119 apartments on lot 47 of the future American Center East Park 5th Edition subdivision and a 4-story 82-unit apartment building on future lot 48. Agenda item 6, Legistar 76504, located at 4846 East Park Boulevard, 17th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential urban 2 district for a multifamily dwelling containing greater than 60 units, consideration of a conditional use in the TRU2 district for a residential building complex, and consideration of a conditional use in the same district for outdoor recreation, all to allow construction of a residential building complex with approximately 200 apartments in 2 4-story buildings with an outdoor pool on lots 49 through 50 and a private park on outlot 22 of the future American Center East Park 5th Edition plat. Agenda item 7, Legistar 76897, located at 4351 East Town Way, 17th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Center District for an animal boarding at an existing animal daycare in a multi-tenant commercial building at 4303 East Town Way. And then items for referral include agenda items 9, 10, and 11, Legistar 76506, Legistar 76589, and Legistar 76508 to be referred to May 8th, 2023. Also for referral, agenda items 12, 13, and 14. Legistar 77207, Legistar 77375, and Legistar 765 9-0, also to be referred to May 8th. I will open the public hearing. We have no registrants wishing to speak, so I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the consent agenda is unanimously approved. Okay, moving on to the things that were not approved on the consent agenda. The first item is agenda item 3, Legistar 77372, Planning Division Staff Update 2023 Comprehensive Plan Interim Update. And my understanding is we will first hear from Kirsty Lotch. Kirsty, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Chair Zellers. I have a presentation that I'll pull up here. Bear with me just one moment. Okay, are you seeing the full screen, not
Yes.
the note version? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Kirsty Lotch. I use they, them pronouns. I work in the planning division. I'm joined by my colleague, Ben Zellers, and we wanted to talk with the Plan Commission tonight about the 2023 Comprehensive Plan Interim Update. So the Comprehensive Plan was adopted in 2018 after extensive engagement with the community. Some of you Plan Commissioners were involved back at that time, but for those who are new or not familiar, the Comp Plan covers a wide range of topics like land use, transportation, housing, the economy, and so on. And includes priorities to guide decision-making and investment. And importantly, it also guides private development through the Generalized Future Land Use Map, or GFLU map. So this discussion tonight is an initial discussion to inform the process before we get this process started. And so we'll be coming back to Plan Commission along the way, and Plan Commission will have the opportunity to review the changes as we move through the planning process. So a full update to the city's comprehensive plan takes place every 10 years with a focused interim update at the 5-year mark. So it's now been 5 years since the plan was adopted in 2018. So we'll be starting this interim update this year. And the interim update is a short-term intermediary update to the plan. And some of the reasons why we conduct this update. First of all, we would like to add in the health and safety element. That element was adopted by Common Council in 2022 after a year-long process to develop those recommendations. And by adding in health and safety, it helps to reflect a wider range of city services and initiatives that aren't necessarily required under comp plan law, but helps to cover more city agencies and is important since the plan is used for budget requests. The second reason is we want to more clearly convey adopted city land use policy and include the revisions to the GFLU map from our recently adopted plans or plan amendments. And third, this also provides an opportunity for the public to propose revisions to the GFLU map that will be considered through this process. And I just wanted to mention that we did a similar interim update process in 2011-12 timeframe. There were quite a few changes that were made through made to the GFOU map through the 14 plans that had been adopted or amended since the 2006 plan. And with the proposals that came in from the public, there were 9 proposals from the public, and 2 of those 9 were approved as a part of that 2012 process. So just to reemphasize again, this is just an interim update. It's not a full rewrite. It's not like the process that we conducted back in 2017 or 18. Overall, the approach to the project is to be somewhat selective about the revisions that we'll make. So the edits we're proposing are relatively minor. Many of them could be considered administrative updates, not all of them, but a majority of them are. Or updates, those administrative updates are ones that have been essentially vetted through recent processes and have been approved. The main focus for this interim update is on the GFOU map. We'd like to update it to reflect the 17 new plans or plan amendments that have been adopted since the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2018. And I'll cover more on that in just a moment. But then there are also some other types of edits, and the memo that you were provided with lists them all out. But overall, we're proposing some limited text edits, many of those in the growth framework chapter. We'll be updating the growth projection that's in the plan. We feel that's important to update, but we aren't going to, or not planning to update the rest of the data in the plan, as could be a pretty large undertaking. And as I mentioned, we'll add the health and safety element. But outside of the health and safety element, we don't anticipate making edits to any of the goals, strategies, and actions in any of the original 6 elements of the plan. And we will update most of the maps within the plan, but not update the reference maps in the appendix. There's about 25 or so. Let's see. So this slide breaks down the revisions into a couple of different categories. So we have revisions to the GFOU map. In particular, tonight we want to focus on some of the revisions that are non-administrative in the discussion. So there are some revisions that are listed as staff recommended, and then there are 3 other potential non-administrative text revisions as well that staff would like guidance on. So that's within the first few pages there of the memo, and we can dive into these in detail as we move into the discussion. But I wanted to briefly mention how this project interfaces with the planning framework. So we are now working on the 12 area plans as part of the new planning framework. So those 12 area plans will be created and updated every 10 years. This map shows the sequence of those 12 area plans, and moving forward, it's intended that the area plans that are adopted will be reflected into the comp plan's GFOU map update right afterwards. We'll incorporate those. This will help to ensure that land use recommendations across plans are consistent, which is also simpler for the public, for users of the plan to understand. And we also feel that the scale of area plan processes is better suited to make some of the more in-depth changes or geographically specific changes to the GFOU map. We think that we're better able to get the public involved at the area plan scale as opposed to a citywide scale. And the interim update proposed edits many of them are relatively minor. We think that, those geographically specific sort of maybe more in-depth revisions are again better suited for the area plan processes. So the main component, as I've stated already, is to revise the GFOU map to incorporate the 17 area plans that have been adopted, not area plans, the 17 plans, different types of plans, sub-area plans that have been adopted or amended since the comp plan in 2018. And then we are adjusting for some annexations by McFarland in the far southwest part of the GFOU map. on the far east side as well, incorporating some intergovernmental agreement, open space area on the town of Cottage Grove intergovernmental agreement. So we've got a revision over on that part of the GFOU map. And then overall took a look at how green space is mapped across the GFOU map to make sure that we're showing that consistently throughout. And then we've updated a few select areas for recent approvals. In more obvious cases like plats, for example, the Ramish Farm on the north side, and recent city land purchases for parks. So here's the list of those 17 recently adopted or amended plans. Not going to read them all, but they are also in your memo, along with the date that they were adopted or revised. Just throwing up the GFOU map here. Don't want to spend any time really looking at it right now, but there is a large version in your materials if you wanted to pull that up and take a closer look. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the draft criteria that we'll use or we're proposing to use for reviewing GFOU amendments from the public. So we've established these 5 draft criteria and intend for them to be used as a guide to encourage objective analysis and decision making regarding proposed GFOU amendments from the public. Overall, the criteria are relatively similar to the criteria that's been used in previous processes, the 2011-12 process, as well as the 2018 process to update the GFOU map. So I'll just kind of briefly run through them to get a little bit better understanding of what they mean and what we're trying to do with these criteria. So the first 2 criteria relate to essentially excluding land use changes in areas where land use has been reviewed through a recently adopted plan or a plan that the city is currently working on. So these first 2 criteria are reflected visually on the second map that's in your materials, the adopted or in progress plans since 2018. So we are, not encouraging GFOU changes in those areas where we have a recently adopted or approved plan or a plan in progress. So that way we can also focus on areas that haven't been through a recent planning process. Criteria 3 and 4 were both used during the 2012 and 2018 processes. So we want to make sure that there's consistency with the recommendations in the existing comp plan, as well as consistency within the context of the surrounding land uses and development patterns in the proposals that we get from the public. And then criteria 5 relates back to the generalized nature of the GFOU map. So we kind of want to help steer away reviewing proposals for very small sites, like a 1/4 acre site or smaller, and that helps with the intention of being somewhat selective about the proposed changes to the GFOU map as well. Just wanted to also mention that we looked at criteria used by other cities. Some cities also use something for a minimum acreage. Obviously, not all cities do that, but this is a criteria that we have not used previously. Wanted to briefly touch on the draft public participation plan. So that is attached to your material as well. Very basic outline of the outreach and public participation plan. So we will have a project webpage. Should be able to have something that's pretty interactive and folks can find all the information they need. We'll be sending project updates by email, including to our list of neighborhood contacts. We'll create handouts and distribute materials at all the libraries. We'll hold public meetings, use both traditional and social media to spread the word. And one other thing I just wanted to emphasize here is that we'll be trying to make it clear to the public that this is an interim update. The scope is somewhat limited. And there are only certain pieces of the plan that we'll be revising through this process. And want to emphasize that the upcoming area plans are a better way to make geographically specific, more in-depth land use changes in areas. So to take a look at the timeline here, after tonight's discussion, we will, potentially make some changes to our approach and use the feedback that we get from Plan Commission tonight to inform the process. Then we'll introduce the authorizing resolution. June 7th is a key date. We'll post the revised GFOU map, which will include the staff recommended changes. We'll also post staff recommended text edits and issue the call for proposals so that the public can suggest GFOU map revisions as well. We'll allow about a 60-day window to submit those proposals. Want to make sure we provide plenty of time. And then staff will review proposals and post written responses on the project website. And then the target is to have Plan Commission review and discuss everything at the September 7th special Plan Commission meeting. And then go through the adoption process in the fall. So this is, our target timeline. Of course, things could change, but this is what we have in mind as we're making our way through this process. So that's what I have for a presentation. We can certainly jump back to any questions that folks might have, but I will hand it back over to the chair.
Thank you. We do have one registrant, a familiar name and face, Eric Paulson, DeMilo Way, District 3, neither support nor oppose and wishing to speak. Eric, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And I did not expect to see you all quite so quick, but tonight I'm here on behalf of Nan Fay, who is the chair of the Farmland Preservation Task Force, and just providing a little bit of information. You may remember that the Council created a task force on farmland preservation back this fall, and I was appointed to it as a member to represent the Plan Commission. It had originally planned to wrap up by March 31st. It's just a little bit behind, and it is hopefully going to finish up its draft and start that draft plan through the approval process here on its Wednesday meeting. And the idea is that the Plan Commission we'll see that potentially on May 22nd, as well as Sustainable Madison and the the Madison Food Policy Council and a couple other folks. So what I just wanted to be here about in your memo, there's a little bit about this staff is looking for a little bit of input on urban agriculture. I wanted to just let you know that there is going to be a lot of information coming as part of that report. There's a lot of background information. There are some specific recommendations that the draft includes and it is likely to bring forward. Some of them are land use and definitely in the wheelhouse of Plan Commission. Others are very policy and staffing requests that are outside of what the Plan Commission would talk about. It does not, the draft right now does not, and I'm 99% certain the final recommendation from the task force does not include any recommendations on changes to the GFLU or any sort of target percentage of land that should be set aside for agriculture. It's instead, I think, more of a document, some guidelines and some ideas to think about for how to balance and value or help value and understand how to look at trade-offs for urban agriculture and some of the benefits that may not be captured in our current plans and policies. Again, I'm just here mostly to tell you that this is coming. I'm not going to try to summarize the entire plan. First off, it's not done. We're going to wrap that up hopefully here on Wednesday. You can find the draft of that text it's in Legistar. You can find the agenda for the Wednesday meeting and find it on that item and take a look. There's about 43 recommendations in the current draft, some of which apply for land use and some of which don't. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you all for doing the work of the city.
Are there any questions of Eric? Any questions of Eric? I have one. So, Eric, are you suggesting that there needs to be any changes in the comprehensive plan interim update approach?
I don't know that there needs to be in the approach. The draft report does have some recommendations for changes to the comp plan text, which might go beyond what's a little bit envisioned here. I think I think the timing is just a little unfortunate in how this is going to work out. So I'm not sure how to kind of balance that. But I don't think it's not a large change to the overall process. It just may be. There are other recommendations that perhaps the Plan Commission is going to recommend to the council that they adopt, and this would be a kind of a logical time to slip it in.
I see.
So,
okay, some things that perhaps need to be added to the comprehensive plan that might not have been considered so far. Okay.
The memo kind of said, maybe we should add a sentence to the urban agriculture. The report envisions a bit more than a sentence change, not a dramatic change, but a couple of places here and there that would help. And a lot of the changes a lot of the recommendations that the draft task force recommendations are making, again, don't apply to the plan directly. So,
okay, very good. Thank you very much, Eric, for taking time to visit with us again.
Right.
Any further questions of Eric? Okay, then we'll come back to potential questions of staff. Kirsty, could you unshare your screen, please? Thank you, so we can see each other. So the first question that she asked is, do you have any guidance regarding recommended edits to the GFLU map and plan text? Are there any changes you recommend to the list of GFLU criteria that will be used to evaluate map amendments requests from the public? And do you have any comments on the draft public participation plan? So do you have questions for Kirsty or other staff? Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. So I'm not sure, just a clarifying question, is the town of Madison was already included on the original plan, or is that going to be included on these changes? I saw some other towns, but I didn't see the town of Madison.
So Kirsty, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that. When we drafted the 2018 plan, the town of Madison was not yet attached, but one of the things that we will be doing, that's sort of a somewhat minor way to address it, is just make sure that all of the maps include those boundary changes, so that the town is now included in those maps. And there's a reference map in the appendix as well that shows the adjacent municipalities and our intergovernmental agreements that we will make sure to update as well to include that town of Madison and other changes to the boundary.
Thank you.
Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. So I noticed the 2-acre limit for the revisions. I was curious, and this doesn't happen often, but sometimes we'll see a development proposal that is not necessarily consistent with the use in the GFLU. And I'm wondering if that was a case and the site was less than 2 acres. Is someone still able to, I assume they can, but still bring a proposal forward for a zoning change? At that time, it's kind of evaluated against the consistency or lack of consistency with the GFLU?
Yes, I can answer that question. Yeah, so that the 2-acre minimum is potential criteria. I think that we would definitely still accept any proposals that were for a site that were less than 2 acres, and Planning Commission would need to review that and make a decision about whether or not the change would be acceptable.
Okay, and then it may be, if it was if it did move forward, it may be just captured in the next GFLU update, but not necessarily updated like at that time. I can see why you don't want to like be constantly updating the map for small changes throughout the time period. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the thought is like there could be some really small sites, for example, in downtown that are maybe adjacent to a land use, and with the generalized nature of this map, it seems to us to make sense to leave it a little bit more generalized and not review those smaller sites.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cantrell.
I also had a question about that criteria larger than 2 acres, and I understand what staff's is getting at, but I guess I would just provide the weasel word generally larger than 2 acres, because I think in some cases, especially in the central city, that there's going to be some areas that we need maybe a little bit more fine grain than 2 acres. 2 acres is a fairly large area when you're considering, a block. So I guess that would be at least one suggestion I would have. I don't know if other commission members would, agree with that, but that's a suggestion I have tonight. The other one is I think that older now, Marcia Rummel raised a question about the house-like, removing house-like residential character and putting in place of that the missing middle. And I guess in reading her information, I kind of agree with Marcia on that one, that I think that especially in the central part of the city, that a lot of the older historic areas, house-like makes more sense. And I guess I would suggest that we retain that. And there may be areas outside of the central city and in the older areas, outside of the older areas, that missing middle might be more appropriate. But I think in this case, I would suggest that language and character be retained. I think that would be important. So that's just my input on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Commissioner Mendez.
Thank you, Chair. To follow up from Commissioner Cantrell's, Alder Rummel also mentioned something about the character. She's not convinced that term is exclusionary. Can staff speak a little bit to that?
So, yeah, do you want to take that, Kirsty?
Sure, thank you. Would you prefer that I wait for you to ask if I'm going to take it, or should I just take it?
No, sometimes other staff raise their hands, so sure. I don't know if you're going to be the point person on all the questions or not. But go ahead.
I can do my best at this one. And I mean, of course, the word character is it's subjective. But when we met with other planning staff, the issue was raised that they have heard from community members that the word character has been noted as sounding exclusionary. This may not be the case that everyone feels that way, of course, but it's something that other planners brought forward when we discussed this map note.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Alder Field.
Hi, nice meeting you all over this platform. And thank you for the presentation and all the information. I had noticed, my question is about the population projection. I noticed that the update in years makes a lot of sense to me because we are 5 years down the road and then looking ahead an additional 5 years. And that's a much bigger total number of folks that we're looking at adding over that period of time, suggesting a higher rate of growth, which does not surprise me. But I'm wondering if you can speak to whether there was a change in the estimate methodology or base assumptions, or kind of what was behind the increased rate of growth, because I think it would be relevant when we're considering future land use, zoning and whatnot. Thank you.
I can take that one if you'd like.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, there definitely is a fairly sizable adjustment for that. There is a bit of a change in the methodology. There have been some growth projections that we worked with the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission and MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, on in the planning division, and then of course also the 2020 census came out in the meantime as well, and showed that we were growing really at the very upper ranges of what was shown in the 2018 comp plan. So we really adjusted the projections based on the past trends, basically the past 20 years, including the 2020 census, and then those estimates, those growth projections that we did in conjunction with CARPC and the MPO. So that's the new change in methodology, and that kind of gets us to that higher number for 2050.
Thank you, Ben. Did that answer your question, Alder?
It did very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. This is more of a comment than a question right now. Do you want to hold for questions still for a bit? I can wait otherwise.
Yeah, let's work our way first through the questions, and then
Sounds
we'll come back to comments. Does anybody have more questions? I guess not. So we will go to comments. Commissioner Solheim.
I was going to go back to the discussion about character and language and house-like terminology. I've been thinking about this a lot, especially sometimes we have plans that are older that, for projects or areas, and you see a lot of language talking about preserving single family character, for example, or something similar. And while I don't think that, necessarily large buildings and single family areas are always necessarily appropriate, I think we do have to recognize that phrasing like that can be loaded, and can be used to deter a more diverse set of housing options. And I think, it's, as was mentioned, the planning industry is kind of like grappling with, and committees like this kind of grappling with how we've influenced, racial equity in land use. So I do think as part of this process, it would be really good to consider any best practices for language that can kind of balance the desire for maintaining neighborhood character as it is, while still allowing it to evolve over time. And I'd be really interested in kind of what the options are to explore that. Like, are there ways that we can talk about retaining or preserving single family or house-like character, and instead of talking about like enhancing existing neighborhoods, promoting a diversity of housing types? I think a lot of us are thinking about the same thing. And Alder Rummel brought up about how house-like can be more like about design and building type. And if that's what we're looking for, I think maybe adding that specificity so it's not misleading that we're looking for a specific use, for example, would be helpful. So that's my comment on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. I am going to second Alder Commissioner Solomon on this. Is exactly. I'm glad that she spoke before me, so I don't have to try to put all those words into context. But I think it's super important that we. I think it's super important to make the efforts of this commission to turn our policies and procedures into language that is more equitable all across the ordinances and plans and things like that. So often, I mean, I know I'm the rookie in this whole thing. I only been around for 2 years, but often those terms are used to really weaponize the process, and we should not be participating on that kind of whatever you want to call it. I want to call it a game or whatever, but we should not be facilitating the use of weapon for people to weaponize our ordinances. So if anything, we should definitely have a discussion about it and trying to figure out how to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Shepherd.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to comment regarding point 3 in terms of the discussion questions. As it relates to, once again, the public participation plan. What I would just recommend, suggest, throw out there, 2 things. One, highlight what is new this time around. There have always been questions, and I'm sure there will always be questions about how effectively and efficiently we reach out to the public to get feedback and that sort. If we are doing anything new this time around in terms of social media, maybe having more staff go to in-person meetings and that sort, we need to document those and highlight those. And then the second point would be, I would just suggest, and again, you guys are doing the work, but if it's possible to make greater use of the neighborhood organizations, contact with the neighborhood organizations can be both effective and efficient. And once you contact them, they can contact their members and that sort. But my major point is, if we're doing anything new in terms of public outreach, participation, one, we should do something new. We can always improve that, but also highlight that and make sure everyone knows exactly what you're doing to improve that sort of outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments or responses to the discussion question? Commissioner Solheim.
All right, a few more comments not related to what we talked about earlier, but there's discussion about reviewing office areas and other employment areas and how we can consider residential. I think that's obviously really smart given some of the changing times, and also could help support additional retail or commercial uses in those areas if we introduce more people in residential. So I really like that. Having some guidance on that for when we see those proposals come forth would be really helpful. Related to public participation, I'm realizing that the timing of this probably won't work out, but I was thinking about it the other day when I was going by one of the new or future BRT stations. Using those maybe in the future for notices about like public meetings and plans would be helpful. I'm just thinking it's like a place that is controlled by the city and people are standing there like hanging out, especially if we want to have more people that use like public transportation regularly involved in our planning processes. That would be a really good way in my mind to kind of get more participation.
Good idea. Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Figueroa Cole.
I mean, and along with the neighborhood associations, we have a number of NRTs, and Metro, for example, has made a point of visiting the NRTs and the presentations on their projects or the library, to just bringing these presentations to the NRT meetings it's valuable. And then, as you may know, we started last year with Parks Alive programs for the summer, and we have a new position open for it, which we expected to have Parks Alive throughout the entire year. And those are always opportunities for community engagement and community meals, for example. Like there's, I agree, we definitely need to reach out to neighborhood associations, but we have to do a better job at going a bit farther than just neighborhood associations. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Alder. Alder Knox.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
On that last point, I would say I like the neighborhood association suggestion, because some of these meetings are during the day when most people are working. Neighborhood associations are in the evening when most residents can make arrangements to come. So those NRT meetings are effective, but they're mostly organizations and staff. But if you really want to get to the residents, you really need to focus in on those resident organizations.
Very good. Thank you for joining us this evening, Alder.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? I don't see any raised hands. I'm going to ask staff. Kirsty, I'll look at you since you seem to be the lead on this. Have you gotten what you were looking for, or do you have any further questions or wanting any further clarification from the Plan Commission?
I think if the recommendations regarding the GFOU criteria weren't super clear to me whether or not we should keep that last criteria. The larger than 2 acres. I know that Commissioner Cantrell mentioned including the word generally larger than 2 acres. Is that something that other commissioners are in agreement with?
I would just say I'm definitely in agreement with having something like that, because in some parts of the city, and Commissioner Cantrell mentioned that in the downtown, that would take up a large portion of the downtown if we only applied that. So I think that in some cases, we may want something slightly smaller than that. Other commissioners do? Yes, I see. Heads shaking, yes, and thumbs up. Okay. That help, Kirsty?
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to see if Ben has any other thoughts on things that we should also cover more in depth.
Maybe just asking about the approach to addressing special institutional potential modifications to that land use. As the Commission's certainly aware of, there can be redevelopment proposals for churches that may be mapped as special institutional or might be mapped as an adjoining residential land use. And so I'm just wondering if kind of the general approach that we had outlined in the memo for trying to provide some additional guidance for that is something to move forward with, or if there were any comments on that.
Can you throw that up on the screen, Kirsty, what your proposal was or what your discussion?
Yes, just one moment.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay. So this is under the staff recommended non-administrative revisions in your memo, but the 2 points that relate to redevelopment of special institutional are points 1 and 3 here. So we would add language under low residential on page 20 to address redevelopment of special institutional in uses that are designated as low residential, that occurs on the map in some cases. But the main way that we are thinking about addressing that is to add a paragraph on page 26 where special institutional is described and defined to provide some guidance for redevelopment of special institutional areas into non-institutional uses. We don't have specific language drafted that's included, but overall, Ben sort of described broadly what we are thinking. It looks like Heather may want to speak on this as well.
Okay, good. Heather.
Thank you. I just wanted to add kind of in really simple language, what we're talking about here is, let's say that a church or another institution is no longer moving forward. And what we're seeing is some of those institutions are interested in selling their property for redevelopment. Some have been to the Plan Commission. We're aware of others that are interested. In instances where those institutions lie on, large properties surrounded by relatively low density residential development, we want to explore opportunities to allow for greater densities if those sites are redeveloped. So that's what we're talking about here. As those institutional uses transition, or whether it's losing a congregation or something else, they do become opportunities for redevelopment, but may not necessarily redevelop into the exact pattern of land uses surrounding them today.
Okay, that's very helpful, Heather. So Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I would totally agree with that. I think that we a year or so ago, we reviewed a project, a church redevelopment just north of Atwood, I believe, and for multiple family. And I think that those are the type of projects I think that we'll probably be seeing in the future when churches, want to sell and maybe relocate to another site. But I think that would be a good approach. I think that we do need some standards. The Plan Commission needs some standards to evaluate those sorts of situations.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Kirsty, can you unshare your screen again? Alder Field.
Thank you. I wanted to echo Commissioner Cantrell's comment and also add that I think in most cases, what we'd considered special institutional spots would already be the center of those parts of the community. I'm guessing folks would already be pretty used to events there, services there, crowds going in and out. So this seems pretty consistent, and events like this seem like great opportunities to continue using that space as the center of a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other comments about this particular question or anything else? Seeing no raised hands. If staff don't have anything further, and I see no raised hands from staff, then we will move on to our next. Do you need a motion on this, Heather?
We don't need an action on this tonight, but just wanted to bring it to you before we really get going on this.
Great. Okay.
Relatively
Thank
short
you.
Process. Yep.
Yes, and I appreciate the explanation on some of these things that were a little bit cryptic in the overview. So it was very helpful. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 4, Legistar 76302, 652 Burnt Sienna Drive, 9th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential consistent 3 district for a daycare center, and consideration of a conditional use in the TRC 3 district for a building or structure exceeding 10,000 square feet in floor area to allow construction of a 1-story daycare center. And I believe first we are going to hear from Tim Parks with a bit of an overview. Tim.
Yes, Chair, members of the Plan Commission, just briefly, the request before you is for the southwest corner of Burnt Sienna Drive and Old Sauk Road on the far west side, a parcel zoned TRC3 as part of the plat of Chapel View, which surrounds it on the east and south. This is a parcel that was originally envisioned for some sort of daycare or community institutional use. Now comes a proposal for an approximately 10,000 square foot daycare center to occupy the 1.7 acre parcel. Access to the site will be solely from Burnt Sienna Drive, with parking for approximately 45 automobiles. This will provide daycare services for children ages 6 weeks to approximately 5 years, as well as after school care for children up to age 8. Staff has reviewed the conditional use request and believes that the Plan Commission can find that the conditional use standards and supplemental regulations for daycare facilities are met, subject to the conditions of approval outlined beginning on page 4 of the March 27th staff report. And as noted in the addendum that was provided on Friday, we would recommend approval subject to the revised landscape plan dated today, as well as the plans for the facility otherwise that are dated April 17th. I'd be happy to answer questions after the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We do have a couple of registrants. The first one is Gary Wendt, who is the applicant, Barrington Commons Court, Barrington, Illinois, in support and wishing to speak. Gary, you have 3 minutes.
Gary, you should see a prompt on your screen to unmute. It may be underneath a window.
Yes.
There we go.
Does that work now?
Yep, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Well, good evening and thank you for your service to the community. I am with Bradford Real Estate Companies, and also with me is John Kastner with Verbecker, our civil engineer and landscape architect. John and I will be available to respond to questions when appropriate. The proposed learning center is with The Learning Experience, and I often use the acronym TLE. They're a national daycare provider with over 250 learning centers in the US. And we have 5 that are in pre-construction stages, this project and 4 others in Wisconsin. And we have completed more than 20 in other states. The one that's operating closest to Madison is in Sun Prairie. So that's just a bit of background. The proposed facility is adjacent to the community church in Middleton on that vacant lot that was designated for a learning center within the Chapel View neighborhood. As noted, is a building of 10,000 square feet with outdoor play area of 5,000 square feet, including short-term spaces at the front door, 12 spaces there for parent-child drop-off. Our design team has been working closely with City and Middleton Community Church. The site is 1.7 acres. It's large for the TLE program and allows for considerable green space, landscaping, including a proposed butterfly garden for the kids. The building design is 1-story with sloped mansard roof, masonry and siding materials and colors that work very well with the nearby homes, and that has recently been updated. We've been working with the members of the Middleton Community Church, and I wanted to introduce Ralph Jackson, a member of the church, who wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Gary. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Just that I would be available to respond to questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next registrant is Ralph Jackson, Rocky Dell Road, Cross Plains, in support, wishing to speak, representing the Middleton Community Church. Ralph, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Chair and commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to speak. As noted, I am a member of Middleton Community Church, which is just adjacent to this property. And first, I'd like to thank all of you for the added time. You postponed this hearing for several times to give us an opportunity to work with Bradford. When we sold this property to Chapel View 5 years ago, we had included some deed restrictions relative to the design of any facility, the character, if I may use that, to match the adjacent residences, and also the need for some specific landscaping as a buffer. We have used this extra time very appropriately, I think, and collaboratively with the developer, so that I am now pleased to recommend that you do approve this. I think the revised elevations and the addition of a number of evergreen trees along the western edge of the property greatly enhance the property, and they meet the needs that had been set aside in our deed restrictions. So I will relinquish the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of, let me go. There's a couple of people who are available to answer questions. John Kastner, West Virginia Street, Milwaukee, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Civil engineering surveyor and landscape architect for the Learning Experience Daycare. And Chloe Knack, also West Virginia Street, Milwaukee, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, representing also the civil engineering surveyor and landscape architect. Are there questions for any of our registrants? Questions of any of our registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Are there questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I would be looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards are met and approve the conditional use to allow the daycare center to be constructed at 652 Burnt Sienna Drive, subject to the staff conditions in those below.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Mendez. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, this use was planned since 2018. I think that there's a great demand for daycare centers in the community, and I believe that this will hopefully fulfill some of those needs, and therefore recommend approval.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other comments, input? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is Agenda Item 8, Legistar 76898, located at 7005 Tree Lane, 9th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Suburban Employment District for a restaurant tavern in a multi-tenant commercial building. Tim Parks, can you address this for a few minutes? What we're looking at here?
Sure. I will try to hit the highlights. 7005 Tree Lane is a request to put a new restaurant tavern tenant within a 2,648 square foot tenant space on the first floor of a 2-story multi-tenant commercial building at the southwest corner of Tree Lane and Gammon Road. This is a site anecdotally that has hosted other restaurant tavern tenants in the roughly 20 years since the building was first built. However, in the Suburban Employment District, restaurant taverns are conditional uses, and if a space is vacant for longer than 12 months, any conditional use status that use had previously is relinquished, and a new conditional use approval is required. So the request is for a new restaurant tenant with hours of operation 7 days a week of 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., an occupancy of 91, and no exterior changes to the building. Staff believes that the conditional use standards can be met to allow a new restaurant tavern to occupy the space. It is recommended in the comprehensive plan for community mixed use, and we feel that restaurant taverns are appropriate in community mixed use areas, as well as in this case in the Suburban Employment District. So staff is happy to answer any questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I will open the public hearing. We do have one registrant, Alex Weiss, Harbor Drive, Madison, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, representing Tony Amelis, Casa Fiesta Restaurant, 7005 Tree Lane. Does anybody have any questions of our registrant? Commissioner Cantrell.
I guess I just have one. Is there any outdoor activity planned for the restaurant tavern at this site?
Alex?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. At this time, there is no specific outdoor seating or activity planned. But in talking to Tony, the owner of Casa Fiesta, he's hoping to possibly put a couple of tables on the sidewalk on the parking lot side of the building, which is not the sidewalk on the street side. I believe previous tenants in the property have done this, and there have been no problems associated with it that we're aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions of our registrant? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
Just another quick question. Any outdoor activity, would a minor activity like a couple tables trigger re-review by the Plan Commission, or is that pretty much a minor administrative decision?
I believe it would be considered an outdoor eating area if it's part of their service area, so their licensed premise for alcohol services or part of their business license. The Plan Commission, however, will note that in many cases, outdoor eating areas were made permitted accessory uses in, I want to say, roughly this time last year. There were a couple of different changes to the zoning code made, both of which that changed outdoor eating areas from automatically being conditional uses to only being conditional uses if they would have hours of operation after 9 p.m. And if they were going to have outdoor amplified sound. And there might be something else. I don't know if Heather recalls, but the long story short, it's not necessarily automatic that any outdoor seating would come back to the Plan Commission as a conditional use because of those changes last year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
I'm going to recommend that the Plan Commission find that the approval standards for the conditional use are met and approve the request to allow a restaurant tavern in the suburban employment district at 7005 Tree Lane, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alderfield. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, just briefly. As staff indicated, there's been restaurant taverns located at this site before. And also with a conditional use, the Plan Commission has continuing jurisdiction over a conditional use. So if any issues or problems arise, the Plan Commission has the ability to address those and re-review the conditional use. But at this site, with the history we have at this site, and the timing from 10 to 10, I don't perceive that there will be any issues. That's why I've recommended it to be approved, and I'm sure that's why the staff has recommended it to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further comments by any of the commissioners? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on, business by members. Do any members have any business they would like to raise? Seeing no raised hands, we'll go on to the secretary's report, and looking forward to hearing a bit about the Planning Division's annual report. Thank you for putting that together. It was interesting. Heather.
All right. Thank you, Chair Zellers, and thank you, everyone. Welcome, new alders. I'm just going to take a moment here to share our Planning Division annual report. This is great timing. Each spring for the past 5 years or so, our staff team has worked together to pull together a report that basically just provides an overview of what we've done and really what you as a Plan Commission have done. Also, a lot of work done by the Urban Design Commission, the Landmarks Commission, Madison Arts Commission, and others. But this is really a highlight that I hope you as Plan Commissioners can sort of take with you each year. These are all available on the Planning Division website. Some images here and there, but just a really good thread that I think shows sort of a lot of your work over time. I'll just show some highlights here and encourage you to feel free to read through it. What we provide each year is a public engagement summary. So meetings held, how we engaged with the Madison community in a variety of ways. Major ordinance updates. As many of you can recall, you put a lot of work into the transit-oriented development overlay zoning district, which passed actually very early this year, but we included in the 2022 report. I'll scroll through and find other items really pertinent to your work as the Plan Commission. The new planning framework. This is our new framework for how we approach our sub-area planning in the city. Kirsty spoke about it a little bit earlier this evening. That took a year and a half of meetings with the Plan Commission to iron that out, and we're moving forward with a couple of those area plans, the Northeast and the West area plan now. These are two of the area plans that were adopted in 2022. We had the Shadywood Neighborhood Development Plan, really preserving an important piece of the Ice Age Trail in our far southwest area, and then an amendment to the Yahara Hills Neighborhood Development Plan on the southeast part of the city. I'll scroll through the arts, although it's very important. I'll get to more of the Plan Commission pieces. We always try to provide a development review summary and show some images of some of the more significant proposals that the Plan Commission and others have reviewed and approved. And then what I find interesting, it's a lot of numbers, but a look at our development review stats over time. So we're tracking the number of housing units approved per year by the Plan Commission. Last year, 2022, was a very strong year, over 4,300 multifamily units approved by the Plan Commission. And, a significant amount of work goes into, as you know, the reports that you review in advance of your meetings. And it really comes down to a group of 6 or 7 staff spending the bulk of their time examining development proposals, making recommendations based on our adopted plans and other ordinances, and then leaving it really to you as volunteers to make great decisions. So this is just some numbers demonstrating, the amount of development moving through the Plan Commission and other commissions each year. We also wanted to reflect some of the plans in progress. Already the Hawthorne-Truax Neighborhood Plan was adopted early this year, and the Reiner Neighborhood Development Plan on the far northeast side of the city will be before you in the coming month or so. And then we also reflected in the annual report the Town of Cottage Grove Intergovernmental Agreement, really setting the stage for our far east side and how Madison can continue to grow eastward, providing certainty for both the city and for the town of Cottage Grove as we continue to grow eastward. And then also, of course, the Town of Madison attachment. Staff from all across the city spent countless hours preparing for welcoming over 5,000 new residents when the Town of Madison attached to the cities of Fitchburg and the city of Madison late last year. We reflect some of our work done with our community connections and partnerships, the neighborhood grant program. And then also, and increasingly, we're becoming more and more involved in plan implementation. South Madison plan, the city's involved in quite a bit of assistance, whether funding assistance or land banking for future real estate projects consistent with the South Madison plan. You'll begin to see more of those in the coming years as well, and implementation of other plans too, of course. We moved forward with important implementation measures on the west side in the Odana area plan, some proactive rezonings and official mapping. And you'll see some right away at your next meeting, you'll see some similar efforts in the Easttown area. Then we talk a little bit about how we've used our city's racial equity and social justice tools to guide our approaches, as well as our hiring decisions. And there it is. I went through almost every page. But again, I really want to thank all of you as plan commissioners for the work that I hope you see reflected in these brief annual reports. And we'll try to keep cranking those out. Nice reflection of all of the effort of volunteers like you. Next, let's see. I will share just very briefly just a second. The elected and appointed official code of ethical conduct. And this is something that I will not walk through here, but the Common Council in January did come up with this and by resolution directed that it be distributed to all of the city's boards, committees, and commissions for review. I can honestly say that, I've never seen any problems with regard to plan commissioners, bullying, harassing, or discriminating. But it's just a really important reminder, I think, to all of our volunteers who serve in this type of capacity, that, we are representing the city of Madison. And so I encourage you to please read through that, as other board, committee, and commission members across the city will be doing. And then finally, let's walk through quickly some of the highlights coming up for our May 8th meeting. And the May 8th meeting is going to be different than this evening's meeting. I think there are quite a few items on the agenda, and you'll see some examples of many different types of things. We'll have staff provide a quick overview of the West Area Plan update and how that's going. And then we'll hear from our comprehensive planning team regarding the comprehensive plan progress update. And that's different than what you heard this evening. This, again, is an annual report. How are we doing citywide achieving the recommendations in the city's 2018 comprehensive plan? And so we made that promise to the community when we were doing our exhaustive public engagement process, promised to provide annual updates, perhaps biannual updates of, how is the city doing? How are we moving along with all of these recommendations? And then there are a number of development proposals before you, totaling, I think, over 600 housing units will be represented at the May 8th meeting. There's a project between Johnson and Dayton Street near west of downtown. There's in Hilldale area, a 100-unit mixed-use building. And then we do have a collection of official map and rezoning changes in the greater Easttown area that will be before you. Again, plan implementation steps for that greater Easttown area plan. I'll mention a couple other items. We'll have on Williamson Street, on the 800 block of Williamson Street and South Patterson, a mixed-use proposal there. And then I think that's the last one I'll mention for May 8th. But also the items that were referred this evening will fall on that May 8th agenda as well. At this point, we have a relatively brief agenda for May 22nd, but important item. We hope to provide an update to the Plan Commission on the subdivision ordinance revisions that we're working on now, really to reflect the complete green streets policy. So that'll hopefully be the highlight of that late May meeting. That was a lot. Really looking forward to May 8th. and Chair Zellers will not be there on May 8th. And so we'll try our best to proceed with that meeting in Chair Zeller's absence. I'm sure you'll be missed, Chair Zellers, but
and you'll be in good hands with Vice Chair Cantrell.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you all soon.
Okay, very good. So the next item on our agenda is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Shepherd. Thank you all very much, and do good work. See you later. Bye-bye.